Commander James Reed stood tall on the bridge of Earth's orbital station, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the viewscreen. Before him, the holographic image of the Imperial ambassador flickered, the alien's four eyes widening in disbelief. "This is not a negotiation," Reed said firmly. "As of today, Earth and all surrounding space within the Sol system is officially off-limits to all Imperial vessels, personnel, and proxies." The ambassador's translator produced a series of clicks before responding. "Commander Reed, surely you jest. No single planet has ever denied the Empire access. This is unprecedented." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Then consider us the first." The United Earth Federation had spent weeks preparing for this moment. 50 years ago, humanity had its first violent contact with the Galactic Empire when Imperial mining ships destroyed a human research outpost on Mars. The Empire, spanning thousands of worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, had simply added Earth to its list of resource planets without bothering to ask permission. But humans proved harder to conquer than expected. "I must remind you," the ambassador continued, "that the Empire controls 97% of known space travel routes. Your planet will be isolated." "We're aware of the consequences," Reed replied. He glanced at General Torres, who stood beside him, her face a mask of determination. They had both lost family in the first Imperial attack decades ago. The ambassador's upper eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of frustration in his species. "The Emperor will not accept this insult. You have no understanding of the forces you provoke." Behind Reed, the command center hummed with activity. Technicians monitored defense grids while communication officers broadcast the declaration to every corner of Earth. This wasn't a rash decision. It was the culmination of 50 years of preparation. "Ambassador, this meeting is a courtesy," Reed said, "not a request for permission. By the time this transmission ends, our defense grid will be fully activated." The memory of Earth's first encounter with the Empire flashed through Reed's mind. He had been a young lieutenant then, watching helplessly as Imperial ships tore through Earth's primitive space defenses. The Empire had expected immediate surrender. Instead, they got a decades-long lesson in human stubbornness. "Your defenses cannot possibly stand against an Imperial fleet," the ambassador warned. General Torres stepped forward. "We've had 50 years to study your technology, Ambassador. You might be surprised by what we've learned." On cue, the station's viewports polarized as hundreds of satellites throughout the Sol system activated simultaneously. Earth's defense grid, a network of weapons platforms, energy shields, and automated countermeasure systems, came online with a subtle hum that Reed could feel through the deck plates. "Impossible," the ambassador whispered as his instruments registered the power signatures. "Those are based on Imperial designs, but modified." "Improved," Reed corrected. "We've had time to make adjustments." The ambassador's image flickered as he turned to consult with someone off-screen. When he faced Reed again, his tone had changed. "The Empire does not recognize your right to deny us access. This declaration means war." Reed had expected this. "We've been at war since your ships fired on our Mars colony. The only difference now is that we're ready to fight back." As the transmission ended, silence fell over the command center. Everyone knew what would come next. The Empire would not tolerate defiance, especially from a planet they considered primitive. "Defense grid at 100%, reported a young lieutenant. "All Earth nations are aligned and standing by." Reed nodded and looked out at the blue planet below. For the first time in human history, every nation had united under a single purpose: survival. "And so it begins," General Torres said quietly. Reed squared his shoulders. "No, it began 50 years ago. This is just the first time we're fighting on equal terms." Outside, Earth's new orbital defenses gleamed in the sunlight, waiting for the Empire's inevitable response. Emperor Vex slammed his fist against the obsidian throne, causing his advisors to flinch. The grand hall of the Imperial flagship echoed with his rage. A single planet dares to ban us. He growled. Has Earth forgotten who controls this galaxy? Admiral Thorne stood calmly before his emperor, his gray uniform bearing countless medals from 100 conquests. Unlike the others, he showed no fear. The humans have always been unusual, Your Highness, Thorne said. They adapt faster than most species we've encountered. The Imperial Council, 12 beings from the oldest conquered worlds, watched from their elevated seats. Some seemed amused by Earth's defiance, others insulted. Show me their defenses again, the Emperor demanded. A hologram appeared in the center of the hall, displaying Earth's new defense grid. Satellites and space stations formed a web around the planet, all pulsing with energy signatures that matched Imperial technology. How did they advance so quickly? Asked Counselor Drex, leaning forward to study the display. 50 years ago, they barely had chemical rockets. Admiral Thorne had been asking himself the same question. He had commanded smaller operations against Earth in previous decades, and each time, the humans had learned and adapted with surprising speed. I recommend a test, Thorne said finally. A small scout fleet to probe their defenses. No need to commit our main forces yet. Emperor Vex nodded slowly. Make it so. But I want results, Admiral. This rebellion must be crushed quickly before other worlds get ideas. 3 days later, Admiral Thorne watched from the command bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought _Invincible_ as his scout fleet approached Earth's orbit. 20 ships, enough to overwhelm most planetary defenses, but far from the Empire's full strength. Scout fleet has entered Earth's defense perimeter, reported Captain Mira, Thorne's second-in-command. No response yet. Thorne nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Something didn't feel right. The humans had made such a bold declaration, yet they weren't reacting to the incoming ships. Admiral, Captain Mira said suddenly, I'm detecting energy spikes throughout their defense grid. Thorne leaned forward. Order the fleet to raise shields. Before his order could be relayed, the space around Earth lit up. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out from the defense satellites, striking the lead Imperial ships with pinpoint accuracy. 3 scout vessels exploded instantly. Impossible, Captain Mira gasped. Those are Imperial phase cannons, but the energy signature is different, stronger. Thorne watched grimly as his scout fleet scrambled to return fire. The Earth defenses moved with surprising coordination, concentrating fire on one ship at a time. Within minutes, half the Imperial scout fleet was destroyed or disabled. Order them to retreat, Thorne commanded. On the main view screen, he could see the remaining ships turning away from Earth, their hulls scorched and damaged. The human defenses stopped firing once the Imperial vessels began to withdraw. They let them escape, Thorne murmured. They wanted us to see. Captain Mira looked confused. Sir, they could have destroyed the entire fleet, but they allowed survivors to report back. Thorne's mind was already analyzing what he'd witnessed. They're sending a message. 6 hours later, Admiral Thorne stood again before Emperor Vex, delivering news that no Imperial commander had brought in centuries. The scout fleet was defeated, Your Highness. 8 ships destroyed, 5 critically damaged. The Emperor's face darkened. How is this possible? The humans have not only adapted our technology, Thorne explained. They've improved it. The energy weapons they used were based on Imperial designs, but modified to be more efficient. Counselor Drex leaned forward. Could they have had help? Perhaps one of our rivals. Thorne shook his head. The modifications are unlike anything I've seen. This is human innovation. Emperor Vex rose from his throne, his eyes burning with rage, and something rare for him. Worry. Prepare the main fleet, Admiral. Earth has made its choice. Now they will learn why the Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. As Thorne bowed and turned to leave, he couldn't shake a troubling thought. What if the humans knew something the Empire didn't? How did they do it? Imperial Chief Scientist Wren muttered, reviewing the battle footage for the 20th time. She watched Earth's defensive weapons tear through Imperial shields as if they were paper. The science lab aboard the Imperial flagship hummed with activity as her team analyzed debris from the destroyed scout ships. Screens displayed molecular scans, energy readings, and comparison data from the Empire's vast archives. "There's something fundamentally different about their approach," Wren said, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "They didn't just copy our technology. They reimagined it." Admiral Thorne entered the lab, his face grim. The Emperor grows impatient. "What have you found?" Wren gestured to the central holodisplay. "Their weapons use the same principles as ours, but they've reconfigured the energy matrix. It's like," she searched for words, "it's like they thought about the problem from a completely different angle." "Can we counter it?" Thorne asked. "Not quickly. They've done something unexpected with the underlying physics." On Earth, Professor Mark Wilson stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Massive screens displayed the Imperial fleet regrouping at the edge of the solar system. "They'll be back," Commander Reed said, joining him. "And in greater numbers." Wilson nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. "The question is whether our modifications will hold against their main fleet." Reed looked at the professor with curiosity. For years, Wilson had led the team reverse engineering Imperial technology. His breakthroughs had given Earth its fighting chance. "You never fully explained how you made such significant improvements to their tech," Reed said. Wilson smiled thinly. "Because it wasn't just about the technology. It was about what we found." Before Wilson could elaborate, an aide rushed in. "Commander, Imperial diplomatic vessel requesting permission to enter orbit under white flag protocols." Reed raised an eyebrow. "The Empire doesn't negotiate with planets they consider inferior." "Perhaps we're no longer considered inferior," Wilson suggested. 3 hours later, Lisa Morgan, Earth's chief diplomat, sat across from Imperial envoy Kellis in the neutral space of the lunar base. The stark conference room, with its view of Earth rising over the lunar horizon, felt tense. "The Empire is curious," Kellis began, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "Your advancements are unprecedented for a species at your development stage." Morgan kept her face neutral. "We're quick learners." "Too quick," Kellis countered. "Our scientists believe you must have discovered something beyond just our technology." Morgan titled her head. "What exactly do you think we found?" Kellis leaned forward. "The Empire has existed for 10 millennia. We've cataloged millions of worlds, yet only 13 planets in the entire galaxy contain traces of element X. Earth is the only one with substantial deposits." Morgan's training kept her expression impassive, but internally she was shocked. The Empire knew about element X. Back at the command center, Wilson led Reed through a heavily guarded door and into a chamber that few humans had ever seen. In the center, protected by multiple energy fields, floated a pulsing blue crystal the size of a basketball. "We discovered it 50 years ago, shortly before the Empire arrived," Wilson explained. "At first, we thought it was just an unusual mineral. Then we realized it could interface directly with human brain patterns." Reed stared at the crystal. "Is that what helped you understand their technology?" Wilson nodded. "Element X enhances human cognitive abilities. It lets us see patterns and connections that would normally be invisible. We didn't just reverse engineer their technology. We reimagined it completely. And the Empire knows about it. They found traces on other worlds, but never a deposit this size, and never on a world where the native species could actually use it." Wilson's face darkened. "That's why they're really here, Commander. Not for conquest, not for resources. They want element X, and they want to understand why it responds to humans when it's inert to all other known species." Reed looked back at the crystal, understanding dawning. "So this isn't about Earth challenging the Empire at all." "No," Wilson agreed. "It's about what the Empire would do with element X if they got their hands on it, and why they can never be allowed to have it." Tom Gray moved through the corridors of Earth's Defense Command with practiced confidence, his security badge perfect in every detail, hung around his neck, granting him access to areas few humans ever saw. 6 months of deep cover work had positioned him perfectly within the communications division. No one suspected he was an Imperial spy. Morning Gray called a technician as Tom entered the main control room. Early shift again. Tom smiled easily. You know me, always eager to serve. In truth, his eagerness served the Empire. Admiral Thorne had personally selected him for this mission, the riskiest infiltration ever attempted on Earth. His human appearance, the result of extensive genetic modification, made him the perfect mole. At his workstation, Tom began his daily routine while surreptitiously activating the microscopic transmitter embedded beneath his fingernail. Data from Earth's defense systems flowed through his console, and through him, to the Imperial stealth ship hiding beyond the moon. All systems normal, he reported aloud for his human colleagues while encoding a different message to his Imperial handlers. Asterisk defense grid rotation changed. New weakness identified in Sector 7, asterisk. Commander Reed entered the control room, and Tom immediately noticed something different. Reed moved directly to the security station, speaking in hushed tones with the chief of security. Both men occasionally glanced in Tom's direction. Asterisk, they suspect something, asterisk, Tom thought, maintaining his calm exterior while his heart raced. Gray, Reed called out. My office, please. Tom followed the commander down the hallway, mentally reviewing his cover story and emergency extraction protocols. If discovered, his orders were clear. Activate the suicide implant rather than face Earth interrogation methods. Close the door, Reed said as they entered his office. Tom complied, preparing himself for what might be his final moments. Reed studied him silently before speaking. How long have you been with us, Gray? 8 months, sir. Transferred from the Australian defense sector. Reed nodded slowly. And in that time, you've proven quite valuable. Your work identifying weaknesses in our communications grid was particularly impressive. Thank you, sir, Tom replied, uncertainty creeping in. This didn't sound like an accusation. Reed activated his desk display, showing a map of the galaxy with dozens of highlighted points. These are Imperial outposts we've identified. What's interesting is that several have experienced unexplained system failures in the past month. Tom's training kept his face neutral, but internally he was shocked. Earth had informants within the Empire. Sir, we have people inside the Empire, Gray, just as they have people here. Reed's eyes locked with Tom's, or should I say, people like you. Tom's hand twitched, inching toward the suicide implant trigger hidden in his watch. I wouldn't, Reed said calmly. We've been jamming your transmitter since you entered this room, and that implant in your wrist has been neutralized. Element X radiation has some interesting effects on Imperial biotech. The game was up. Tom straightened his posture, dropping the pretense. How long have you known? From the beginning, Reed replied. We've been feeding you selected information. Your handlers think they've discovered weaknesses in our defense grid. They'll be surprised when their attack fails. Tom processed this revelation. You're using me, just as the Empire used you. Reed stood and walked to a wall safe. He opened it and removed a small blue crystal. Do you know what this is? Tom stared at the Element X sample, the substance that responds to human neural patterns. Yes, but the Empire doesn't understand why. Reed set the crystal on his desk. Have you ever wondered why they sent you, specifically? Why they spent years modifying you to appear human? Tom had never questioned his assignment. Your genetic modifications weren't just cosmetic, Gray. The Empire used human DNA in your reconstruction. Reed pushed the crystal toward Tom. Touch it. Hesitantly, Tom placed his finger on the crystal. To his astonishment, it pulsed with blue light at his touch. Impossible, he whispered. The Empire has been experimenting with human genetics for decades, Reed explained, creating hybrids who can interface with Element X. You're not fully Imperial anymore, Gray. Tom's world tilted as the implications hit him. His loyalty to the Empire had been absolute, but now he found himself questioning everything. "What happens to me now?" he asked. Reed studied him. "That depends. The Imperial fleet is preparing their attack based on your intelligence. Thousands will die on both sides. Or what? Or you help us end this conflict before it escalates further." Reed leaned forward. "The choice is yours. But remember, part of you is human now. Which side will that part choose?" Admiral Thorne stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship Dominion, watching as 500 warships moved into attack formation. The might of the Empire stretched before him, a force that had crushed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Captain Mira announced. "Attack coordinates based on spy intelligence have been distributed." Thorne nodded, studying the holographic display of Earth's defense grid. According to Gray's intelligence, Sector 7 had a vulnerability they could exploit, a rotation gap in the defense satellites that would allow the Imperial fleet to punch through. "Begin the attack," Thorne ordered. "Primary fleet to target the Sector 7 weakness. Secondary forces to engage their lunar bases." The Imperial Armada surged forward, weapons charging as they approached Earth's defense perimeter. Thorne allowed himself a small smile. Despite their impressive advancements, the humans couldn't possibly withstand the Empire's full might. On Earth, Commander Reed watched the approaching fleet from the main control center. Hundreds of officers worked frantically at their stations, preparing for humanity's greatest challenge. "They're targeting Sector 7, as expected," reported the tactical officer. Gray's intelligence worked perfectly. Reed nodded grimly. After revealing the truth to Tom Gray, the Imperial spy had made his choice. The information they'd fed through him had led the Empire exactly where Earth wanted them. "Status of Project Sentinel?" Reed asked. Professor Wilson looked up from his console. "Charged and ready. We can activate at your command." Reed took a deep breath. "Let them get closer. We need as many ships in the kill zone as possible." The first wave of Imperial ships reached the supposed weakness in Sector 7, weapons firing at Earth's defense satellites. To their surprise, the expected gap in defenses never appeared. "Admiral," Captain Mira called out. "There's no weakness. Our intelligence was wrong." Thorne's eyes narrowed as he realized the truth. "It's a trap. Pull back the lead elements immediately." But it was too late. Earth's defense grid suddenly shifted configuration, satellites moving with impossible speed to surround the Imperial vanguard. Instead of finding a weakness, the Empire's ships found themselves encircled. "How are they moving their platforms so quickly?" Thorne demanded. "That's not possible with standard propulsion systems." On Earth, Professor Wilson smiled as he monitored the battle. "Element X enhances not just human cognition, but also our technology. We've incorporated it into our defense grid's movement systems." Reed nodded. "Now, Professor, activate Project Sentinel." Wilson placed his hand on a scanner, the blue glow of Element X reflecting in his eyes as the system recognized his neural pattern. Across Earth's southern pole, massive hidden installations rose from beneath the ice. In space, the Imperial fleet faltered as hundreds of new defense platforms appeared on their sensors. New signatures detected. An Imperial officer shouted, "Energy readings off the scale." Thorne stared in disbelief as Project Sentinel revealed itself, Earth's ultimate weapon. Unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered, these platforms didn't fire energy beams or projectiles. Instead, they emitted waves of blue energy that washed over the Imperial ships. Reports coming in, multiple ships experiencing critical system failures. Captain Mira reported, panic in her voice. "Engines, weapons, life support, everything's shutting down." Thorne watched in horror as his mighty fleet became helpless. The blue waves didn't destroy the ships. They simply rendered them inert, floating dead in space. "It's not destroying them," Wilson explained to Reed. "Project Sentinel disrupts the energy patterns in their technology. Non-lethal, but completely effective." Reed nodded solemnly. We don't need to kill them to win. Within 20 minutes, 300 Imperial warships hung powerless in Earth orbit. Admiral Thorne's flagship, protected by experimental shielding, remained functional but isolated as the rest of the fleet drifted helplessly. "Order the remaining ships to pull back," Thorne commanded, his voice tight with fury and amazement. "Retreat to Rally Point Alpha." As the surviving Imperial ships fled, Thorne stared at the blue planet below. In 10,000 years of Imperial history, no single world had ever defeated an Imperial armada. "Open a channel to Earth Command," he ordered. Captain Mira looked shocked. "Sir, do it. The Empire needs to understand what we're truly facing." On Earth, Reed received the incoming transmission with grim satisfaction. "It seems Admiral Thorne is ready to talk." The battle was over. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Empire had lost. Emperor Vex stood motionless as the holographic recording of the battle played before him. His four-fingered hands gripped the armrests of his throne so tightly that the metal began to warp. Around him, the Imperial Council watched in stunned silence as Earth's defenses systematically disabled the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "Impossible," he finally whispered. "No primitive world could defeat our forces." Admiral Thorne stood at attention, his uniform still bearing the grime of battle. "It was not luck, Your Highness. Earth has technology we don't understand." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "They call it Element X," Thorne replied. "Our scientists have known of its existence, but never understood its true potential." The Emperor motioned to Chief Scientist Wren, who stepped forward with a small data cube. She activated it, projecting a complex molecular structure. "Element X has been found in trace amounts on 13 worlds across the galaxy," Wren explained. "We've studied it for centuries, but it has always been inert, useless except as a curiosity. But on Earth," she paused, her expression troubled. "On Earth, it reacts to human neural patterns." "Meaning what?" demanded Counselor Drex. "Meaning humans can interface with it directly," Thorne answered. "They can control it with their thoughts. This allows them to create technology that responds at the speed of thought, rather than mechanical input." Emperor Vex leaned forward. "And you believe this is how they defeated our fleet?" "I know it is," Thorne said firmly. "I've seen it firsthand." The Emperor stood abruptly. "Then we must obtain this Element X. If humans can use it, we will take humans as well." "There's more," Thorne said, his voice dropping. "I've been granted access to certain information by the humans. They spoke with you." The Emperor seemed incredulous. "They did, and they showed me why Earth has banned our presence." Thorne activated his own data projector, displaying images of massive underground structures. "These are ancient ruins beneath Earth's surface, predating human civilization by millions of years." The council chambers fell silent as the implications sank in. The first ones whispered an elderly counselor. "The legends are true." Thorne nodded grimly. "The beings we've mythologized as the first ones, the supposed creators of hyperspace travel and founders of galactic civilization. They were real, and Earth was their home world." Professor Wilson stood beside Commander Reed in the ancient chamber deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The walls, covered in symbols no human language could translate, pulsed with faint blue light. At the center of the massive room sat a device that defied conventional understanding, a swirling mass of energy contained within a geometric framework. "For decades we've kept this secret," Wilson explained to the Imperial delegation. "The ruins were discovered just before your empire arrived." Admiral Thorne stared at the ancient device in awe. "What is it?" "We're not entirely sure," Wilson admitted, "but we know it's connected to the fabric of space-time itself. The first ones built it as some kind of regulatory system for the galaxy." Reed stepped forward. "Element X is not just a power source. It's a key. The first ones designed it to respond only to certain neural patterns, patterns that, by some cosmic coincidence or design, humans possess. Or perhaps not coincidence. Wilson added, "We have reason to believe the first ones may have had a hand in human evolution." Thorne looked stunned. "You're saying humans are descendants of the first ones? Or perhaps they're designated caretakers," Wilson replied. "Either way, only humans can safely interact with this technology. When others have tried." He trailed off. "What happens?" Thorne asked. Reed's face darkened. "Catastrophic energy releases. The last unauthorized attempt to access First One technology created what humans call the Tunguska event in 1908, a blast that flattened 2,000 square kilometers of forest. And that was just a small outpost," Wilson added. "This facility, it could destroy half the galaxy if improperly activated." Thorne finally understood. Earth hadn't banned the Empire out of defiance or fear. They had done it to protect the galaxy from powers they themselves barely understood. "So your ban on Imperial presence was never about sovereignty," Reed confirmed. "It was about preventing catastrophe. Humans are the only species that can safely manage these sites. We've been struggling to contain and understand this power since we discovered it." Back in the Imperial Council chamber, Emperor Vex processed this revelation in silence. For the first time in his 3-century rule, he felt genuine fear. "If what Thorne reports is true," he finally said, "then Earth cannot be conquered. It must be preserved." The council murmured in agreement as a new reality dawned on the ancient empire. Sometimes, the greatest power came not from conquest, but restraint. The observation deck of the neutral space station, Harmony, offered a spectacular view of Earth. Admiral Thorne stood beside Commander Reed, both men watching as the blue planet rotated slowly below them. 6 months had passed since the failed Imperial invasion. "Your people have adapted well to the new arrangement," Reed commented, breaking the silence. Thorne nodded. "The Emperor is nothing if not practical." Once he understood what was at stake, the decision was simple. The space station, built at the edge of Earth's orbit, represented the first true cooperation between humans and the Empire. Its neutral territory served as the meeting ground for the ongoing negotiations. "The last Imperial military vessels left the Sol system yesterday," Reed said. "Right on schedule. Replaced by scientific and diplomatic ships only," Thorne added. As agreed. In the conference room behind them, representatives from Earth and the Empire finalized the historic treaty. After 50 years of conflict, a new relationship was forming, one based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Professor Wilson entered the observation deck, carrying a small case. "The first shipment is ready," he announced. Reed turned from the viewport. "Are you certain about this, Professor?" Wilson nodded. "Limited sharing of Element X is the cornerstone of our agreement. Without it, there can be no trust." He opened the case, revealing 5 small blue crystals nestled in protective foam. Each contained a tiny amount of Element X, enough for research but not enough for weapons development. "The joint research team has been fully briefed," Wilson continued. "Imperial scientists working alongside humans, with appropriate safeguards in place." Thorne examined the crystals with reverence. "My people have sought understanding of Element X for centuries." The Emperor himself expressed gratitude for this gesture. Reed still looked uneasy. "And the ancient sites remain under Earth's exclusive control," Thorne assured him. "The Empire acknowledges humanity's unique connection to the First One's technology. We will not interfere." On Earth, the global mood had shifted dramatically. News networks reported on the new trade agreements with the Empire, the exchange of non-military technology, and the carefully managed cultural interactions now taking place. Tom Gray, the former Imperial spy, now served as a liaison between the two civilizations. His unique hybrid nature, part human, part Imperial, made him ideally suited for bridging the gap. "The first civilian exchange program begins next month," Gray told the assembled Earth Council. 200 humans will visit Imperial core worlds, while 50 Imperial citizens will experience Earth firsthand. Council President Ortega nodded approvingly. "And the restricted zones around the ancient sites Remain absolutely secure, Gray confirmed. The Empire has formally recognized all 15 sites as sovereign Earth territory, with no-fly zones extending 5,000 kilometers in all directions. Back on the space station, Reed and Thorne watched as the first joint research vessel departed for deep space. The ship, crewed by both humans and Imperials, would study Element X deposits on distant worlds. Did you ever imagine this outcome when you delivered Earth's band 6 months ago? Thorne asked. Reed smiled slightly. To be honest, no. I expected a long war. As did I, Thorne admitted. The Empire is not known for compromise. Nor is humanity, Reed countered. But perhaps that's what makes this work. We're both stubborn enough to maintain the balance. Professor Wilson joined them at the viewport. The ancient records we've translated suggest the first ones believed in cooperation above all else. Perhaps they planned for this moment, creating Element X as a bridge between species rather than a weapon. A poetic thought, Thorne said, though my emperor would call it overly sentimental. Reed laughed. Mine would say the same. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's unique status spread rapidly. Many worlds watched with interest as the mighty Empire accepted a relationship of equals with a single planet. Some even began to wonder if their own relationships with the Empire might change. As night fell over Earth's major cities, citizens looked up at the stars with new perspective. The Empire that had once threatened their existence now orbited in peace. Trade ships arrived daily, bringing exotic goods and knowledge from distant worlds. Earth was no longer banned to the Empire. It was special to it, protected not by fear, but by mutual interest and growing respect. In the ancient chamber beneath the Pacific, the First One's device pulsed with steady blue light, as if approving of the new balance that had been struck between the planet it guarded and the stars beyond.